Hi everybody, it's your pottery professor again. I'm here to show you how to do some cups, and I'm going to use the slab method, a soft slab method, in order to form those. We've done some of this in some of our classes, so it's not completely new to you. Yeah, hopefully it's not. And let's see, the things that you might have to overcome is how you're going to make your slab. And hopefully you'll be resourceful in learning how to do that. I made two yesterday. Actually, filmed this whole video yesterday, and then when I went back to my phone, which is bungee corded to a step ladder on a tripod. The tripod is bungee corded to the step ladder, and it's being held to the tripod by two rubber bands. So I can't see the screen. And I went back to the phone. It had not recorded the whole lesson, or it only recorded about 2.5 minutes and then it cut out. And so this morning I was thinking of how to overcome that, and my son had suggested some kind of mirror so I could see the back of my screen from where I'm standing. And I did find a mirror in the studio, and I have set it up so I could monitor whether or not this phone keeps going, so this doesn't happen again. But it's actually a good thing. It got me a little ahead, so I can show you what I made for my demonstration yesterday, and I'm going to re-demonstrate it today. And then I'll have two sets of cups that match. And so this one is built with a soft slab, and I impressed some seashells into it for texture. And I even pulled a handle. Well, I formed a handle. I'm going to show you how to attach that to later on in the demonstration. Luckily, these have sat out. Well, they were covered up overnight and set up a little bit. So at some point, I'll demonstrate how to take your handle and attach it to your cup, and how to make a judgment about the size of your handle. Because I look at that one, if you see that, it looks like it might be a little too big. So use your aesthetic judgment and make some decisions there when you make your handles. So I'm going to show you how to make one of these, and also let me set this down here. I made another that I started but no handle yet, and this one has a texture built into it. Hopefully you can see that. I'm not sure how well the lighting is with this, but I'm trying to hold it up closer to the camera so you can see. This has a flat rounded bottom and rounded inside. The texture, I'll show you how I make that as we get going. But first on to how to go about making a slab if you're at home. And most likely you are at home working with limited resources, and I understand that, and we're going to do our best to overcome some of those things. So it would be nice if you do have a canvas. Canvas would be helpful. Some kind of smooth cloth would be really good to have. Two of them actually. I'll show you why in a short while. And of course, you're going to need your clay. The other thing you're going to want, and I recommend, is that you get an 8.5 inch by 11 inch sheet of printer paper, and you're going to fold it in half, so it's 4.25 inches. And then I took it down a little bit more, so it ended up at about 9.25 inches. This one I actually measured about 9 3/8, but we can cut the line, so that's okay. This is going to be our template, so that our mugs come out kind of the same width and height. Like these ones are very similar in size because I used a template to suggest how to cut it. And it's a simple template made out of paper. So you might need your ruler. You got your ruler around, that'll be helpful too. And so let's get started with the clay. I don't want this video to run too long. I'm checking my phone, make sure it's still going. I want to be able to kind of do this concisely without taking up too much of your time. Give you the understanding what you need so you can begin the work. And I am looking for my wire tool, and I'm not seeing it, so let me grab one real quick over here. All right, I'm back. Found my wire tool. I see my string over there. I could use that. Dental floss. If you don't have kite string, You could probably use dental floss or fishing string. Fishing line would work to cut a slab. So if you have a larger piece of clay, that's great. If you have one of the smaller blocks, you could probably work with that. You might have to cut it a little bit thicker and stretch your slab out a little bit longer. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here with this. Actually, yeah, let me do it this way. So it'll be closer to the smaller blocks of clay I gave out to students. And I'm going to cut it when it's a little bit thicker than an inch, I'd say, an estimate. And make sure you preserve your clay as you go. Wrap it back up when you're not using it. It will dry when it's uncovered. And if it's a hard block, it's not going to be very usable, although you can add a little water at a time to try to keep it preserved. Let me get that out of camera so hopefully you can see what I'm doing right here. So there is a way to start to stretch out a slab before rolling it. Even if you don't have a roller, this is a method to start to make a slab. You don't have to have a slab roller to make a slab. And the way I was taught to do it was to take your clay and throw it down onto a surface, your table. I'm on a work table. You might not want to do this on your kitchen table, but if you could go out to a clean piece of concrete, like maybe your garage floor, your clay probably won't stick to it as long as it's not wet. Or even your porch, your sidewalk, something like that. As long as it's clean, it's not going to pick up a lot of dirt. You throw it down at an angle. Not too hard, but you see how that stretches? And if I do that, and I'm just trying to stretch a little bit at a time, and then I'm going to flatten it a little bit for some thickness. This is a good way to kind of start a slab if you don't have a rolling pin, or even if you do. And I do have a rolling pin here, so if you do have one at home, I'm going to show you how that's going to work. You can press that out. And I got to be thinking about, this is 4 1/4 inches, so as I push down on it, I'm going to come close to the width I want, and then I'll be able to trim it. I could probably get 2 cups out of this, if I'm lucky. Just push down, try to flatten that out a little bit. I'm thinking about the thickness that I want for my cup. And notice, you know, I'm a little less than 1/4 inch on this. You don't want it too thick. Maybe about 3/8 of an inch is a good thickness. 1/8 of an inch is kind of thin. This is a cup by one of my friends named Ginger, and you see it is made by Slab. Had a rounded bottom on it, and it has a ceramic decal on it, and it looks like birch trees. Of course, the handle stuck on, and contrasting color for the handle and also the inside. It's kind of thin. It's a little thinner than 3/8 of an inch, and it's kind of nice sometimes. It makes them very light if you can go that thin. But I'm thinking about, you know, durability. If you do preserve these pieces to be fired, I will fire them for you. But you got to get them back in good condition. And if they're too thin, they might be a little fragile, so that worries me a little bit. So at this point, I'm kind of outstretching my canvas. I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half now, thinking that I'm going to be able to get 2 pieces out of it. I'm going to work with one at a time. So let me just kind of, I'm using a needle tool. You could also use my fettling knife or my wood trim knife. If you're working on your kitchen table or some nice surface, don't use your needle tool. It will scratch it, so use your trim knife. That would be good. And let me peel that up real quick. I'm going to set this guy aside. I'm going to show you also another way that I could work a slab down if I had to. You could put down another piece of canvas. I had 2 pieces of canvas, so 2 pieces of cloth. And let's say you were able to go out into your garage or shed and you found a piece of PVC pipe. That would be awesome to roll out. So you got to be kind of resourceful what you do. If you just roll the pipe against this clay, just on the clay there, what will happen is it'll probably stick to the pipe, and that's why I'm cleaning it off here, because that'll actually make some dents in the clay when I push down on it. Didn't notice that was on there at first. But this is one way you could actually flatten your slab. There are still other ways. You know, you could push down on it. That might help a little bit. Or if you were able to stretch it out really good, you could take your scraper tools or one of your wooden tools, like your rib, and screed across it and kind of get a smooth surface that way to start out. You don't necessarily need a smooth surface, but I want to start out with one, so I'm going to try to do that. So I'm going to roll this out. I think I probably got a good thickness there. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with that. And you can see, I'll just lay that down, and I am going to use my Beveling knife to cut it. It's a nice thin, flexible blade, but the thinness is what I'm looking for, a thin blade to cut it. Since I'm cutting on the cloth, it's not going to hurt the table. You know, these old shop tables, they don't, they take a lot of abuse, and they've been around many, many years. So I'm not too concerned about that. But your own kitchen table, I don't want you to get in trouble with your parents, wherever you are staying. So save your scrap. Don't let it dry out. You're going to need it all. In fact, if you start to run out of clay, you might have to make projects, keep them wet, and ball your clay up and make more projects from it. Photograph it, and then ball it up and make more. I'm sorry you would have to do that. It's not something that I really wanted to happen, but you just gotta have to work with what we have. And the other thing you might consider is the size of your projects. If you make them a little smaller, you could stretch your clay out a little bit more, and that would be acceptable. That's fine. I'm good with that. So let's see. I think I'll get this canvas. Well, let me spin it this way. And I don't need that right now. I do need a little drink for my voice. So, let me get into this here. In order to make this come around and for each end to meet, I like to bevel the edge at about, the edges about a 45-degree angle. And so what I do is I set my knife on an angle and I try to cut a straight line down across it and not lose too much clay. And this one, I can flip it over, do the same thing, and then the two will match and overlap when I turn this to be round. And that is a good way to have more surface area where they connect. Instead of two ends just butting over, they kind of overlap because they've been beveled. And I don't know if you can see that, about a 45-degree angle opposite on each one, so that when this rolls over, they're gonna lap. And what I want to do now is score and slip. So I'm going to find a scoring tool, a good scoring tool to use that you have in your toolkit. If you have your toolkit as a needle tool, and I can scratch that up and roughen that surface. What you'd want to do is make a rough surface. And the idea behind scoring and slipping, slip is the glue that we use. It's made from some clay. If you take some clay and shave it off, let it dry, and add it to water, it'll turn it to slip real quick. And I made some yesterday for my video yesterday, but you didn't get to see that because it maybe never made it. I'm checking my phone. It looks like I'm still going. Very good. I kept it covered up so that my slip is still wet and ready to use. And my slip brush is here. See, I'm all set up for this morning because I did it already. Nothing like doing things twice. You get good at it, you get better at it. So I'm going to slip this up where I scored on those angles so I can form this round shape. Now, you notice I left this clay smooth. That's because I want to press the shells into this to make a matching cup for this. That's how I made it yesterday, so I'm going to do the same thing. And it kind of deforms the cup, but I like that. I tried to keep it as round as possible, although the base I used was somewhat squared, not completely square, but it wasn't a round base. And I'm going to try to do that again as well. Let me finish slipping. So slip is the glue that we use. It's watered down clay basically. And this has a nice consistency to it. It's almost like heavy cream. If you think in food terms, something that you know. Good slip is between heavy cream and yogurt. And what we're doing, if you were to just take smooth clay and butt it up together with slip in between, it's likely that joint would separate at some point. So what we're doing is we're overlapping it, and then we're making roughened areas, so it kind of interlocks where it is with slip in between, and you get a much stronger joint, so it's less likely to separate. You see, as your clay dries, and when it's fired as well, your clay is going to shrink. Just like your retirement savings in the stock market this week. Although yesterday was a better day, we're still having some volatility. It's still volatile there. How much does clay shrink? We're looking at 12, 13% probably overall. So if somebody told me that I was going to lose 13% of my money, I would be unhappy. And if somebody was going to give me a 13% raise, I'd be ecstatic. So think of it in those terms. You're going to lose a good bit of the size of your piece. And so if you want a 10 ounce or an 8 ounce cup, make it around 10 ounce or so and 9 ounces and allow it to shrink a little bit. Give it a little space. So this is about the size I'm getting so far with that 9 1/4 inch template, 9 1/4 long. And what I'm trying to do here is smooth together this seam. You can try different tools, like if you have a kitchen spoon, so sometimes it's hard to get your hand in there. I'll shape it round in a moment. But right now what I want to do is make sure I'm pressuring this seam together slightly so that it sticks, but I'm not like thinning the clay out too much. I have to be careful of that. And good thing to use on your outside, if you have one, is one of these rubber kidneys. These are very nice to work with for smoothing things like seams. And I try to back it up on the inside with something. If I can get my finger in there, that's awesome. Now, it's hard to get that bottom, so if I do this, hey, it's a little easier, isn't it? Now you can leave the seam visible if you want, or you can, smooth it down to the point where it's hidden. Why would you leave it visible? Sometimes it's kind of interesting. I don't think that it is not beautiful to have that seam there. It is actually honest and shows that this is a hand-built piece and that there is a seam, and it kind of explains how this was made, and that's okay. So I'm going to try to round this out just a little bit here by collaring it, flip it over and have it look this way. Try to decide which part of it I want the top and which is the bottom. And I'm going to go with this as my top right now. Hope you're okay with that. Good. So now I need a base. And what I think I'll do, bring this back into camera here. I have this other slab. Let me finish rolling it out. It's for my next cup. Let's do it this way. Getting ahead of myself, you know? Check my phone, looks like it's going. We're in business today. I'm filming this with my Apple iPhone 6S. Yes, it's not the latest model. That's okay with me. I can deal with that. We'll set that aside for a little while. I just need to make a base for this cup. The way I did that, or the way I'm doing that is I am going to set the clay on there, then mark it, cut it. So kind of like this. I don't know if you caught what I said before, but I have it squared a little bit on the first cup with the seashell impressions. And so what I'm doing is kind of marking the square. I'm going to cut it square first along my marks. And then I'm going to, let's see, let's set it back right on there. Center it. And I'm just going to ease over the edges. Make sure you, it must sound silly, but make sure you set your cup on your slab. Don't try to put the bottom in it, because that will never work. It'll always shrink and be too small. And I know, it might sound a little defeating that, you may not be able to have these fired. Some of you might have to ball them up and put them away. And I know that's a little defeating. But we're trying to do what we can in this difficult situation we've been dealt. I've never taught 4 ceramics classes online in an 8-week period, and so that's why these videos are all new. Everything that I'm doing is, well, not everything I'm doing is new, but I've never done it this way. And so we're trying to get through a tough time and make sure that you get the credit you deserve for the courses you're taking. The best way to do that is to gain the skills of working with the clay. The firing and glazing can come later, and I'm happy to do that if we can do it later, but if we can't, that's just the sacrifice we'll make as we move forward. So I'm just scoring these surfaces up, trying to move at a good pace. I'm going to slip this guy. Now hopefully this is an enjoyable thing for you to do. I know Monday I spent most of the day preparing emails and assignments that were in written form for all my classes. And I made assignments for you to go to an online gallery and read the gallery reviews and find an artist to report on, do some research on that artist, and then write a reaction paper for it. And I spent most of the day sitting on my couch with my laptop in lap to do that. And that's not what I like to do. I'm a busy kind of person. I like to get up and move about and do things. And that kind of lifestyle is really not what I like to do. So working with my hands keeps me happy. And so doing this kind of lesson makes me happy. I'm glad to do this. I'm gonna kind of fix this seam in here. So even if you have to ball it up, maybe this would be therapeutic. You know, there's a lot of anxiety going on right now. I'm feeling it. You're probably feeling it. Your family. Maybe this will be relaxing, good for you. I find it good for me to do art because it helps me express myself, and it keeps my mind busy at problem solving for things that really aren't big life problems, but design problems and things. To me, that's cool. So maybe it's therapeutic for you. Maybe you've got some younger siblings at home, and you could engage them in some of this. Your parents would probably appreciate it. Your siblings would probably appreciate it. They'd probably like to do something with their hands too. Maybe your parents want to do it. That's cool. Bring it. I'm all for it. You know, this is a tough time. And, you know, some people, they don't know they like this until they do it. That's why we require students to do a creative arts class here at Virginia Wesleyan University, so that you might find something that you really enjoy. I did not go to college with the idea of being a ceramics professor. It was never in my mind when I was a young person in college until I took a couple art classes, and one of my professors, well, actually both of my professors really encouraged people, but one, Jerry Likens, really turned me on to clay, and Tommy Mew into painting, and from there my art trajectory just took off. Those are my art fathers at Berry College in Rome, Georgia. So what I want to do now, I'm going to put some textures into this piece, and I'm using a seashell. I had one of these, and it's a scallop shell. You could take a walk on the beach and find some things you could press in there, or you might have some around your house. I'm going to do some seashell impressions like I've done on this cup. So here we go. So I want to back that up from the inside, and I'm just going to kind of do it in quarters. So, you know, I might do one here, and I'll rotate the cup a little bit, and I'll try to do it a different way over here. And it's going to deform the cup. I'm using a very soft slab, so it'll take the impression, and I don't mind that deformity. I think it's kind of nice to do it. That's why I kind of do it random as well. For me, there's kind of an asymmetrical balance maybe to that. So I got 3 in there. I'm going to do one more. Although that's not an asymmetrical balance, is it? I got 4. Japanese would always do things, Japanese aesthetics might do things in the odd numbers, you know, so you might have 3 or 5, definitely not 4. I have to be careful of that seam, it's stretching a little bit, so I just want to make sure it's fine. Now, as you see, this piece has a much rounder top to it, and so I'm going to show you how to do that. You can see the seam right there, and that's okay, I'm going to leave that there. If your seam area gets kind of thin, you might roll out a very thin coil and flatten it a little bit and glue it to the inside to fill in that seam. If your clay gets too thin, add some clay to it, make it a little thicker. This is problem solving that you're into. And that is a skill that art can teach you. How to problem solve, or just practicing problem solving, I think is an important life skill and learning skill, is to learn how to problem solve. Right now we've got a lot of problems facing us. What do we do about it? You know, we come up with solutions, and that's what you should do. And some of those solutions, you know, are going to be from reason. That's why you're getting an education. So you can make informed decisions based on reason. So what I'm doing now, I should explain these things. I'm just so used to doing them. I have my small elephant ear sponge, and it's relatively thin, and it's wet. Not wet, but damp. And what I'm trying to do is smooth around the rim so that it is not very sharp. And this is going to be a cup, so I don't want a very sharp rim on it. I'm also using it to smooth out the base, so I don't have a sharp base. This is all attention to detail, craftsmanship, and there's a lot of reason for it. First, you don't want a real rough base that might scratch up a table if you were to fire this and glaze it. Ceramic material is very hard, it could scratch. A nice wooden table, so you want to be careful of that if you're the maker. So one of the things I'm noticing between the difference between these two, and I just recalled I bellied this out a little bit. I gave it a little more volume by pushing out from the inside. And so I'm going to try to do that. Maybe I'll use my wooden spoon here to kind of push out while I kind of keep the top a little smaller. And that's going to stretch the clay outwards. And it'll give me a little more volume. It'll hold more coffee. Be careful of that seam though. Don't overstretch that seam, because that's something that you could blow out. If something is going to give, it'll be in that seam. So be careful of that. So this one is definitely going to be a little bit smaller. I think the length of my template was 9.5 inches yesterday. I reduced it a little bit. Even a 1/4 inch will make a difference when you reduce it. But still a nice size cup, nice and level. And so before I put a handle on that, I want it to firm up. I want it to become about leather hard, so it's a little stiffer, so it don't deform it. Because right now it's so soft it will deform its shape very easily. So I'm going to set this aside for right now. Here, and I'm going to take the slab that I have rolled out and show you how to texture it, and how I did the texture on this cool piece. I really like the texture on that. This is the slab I have. I'm going to check it for size. We're just about there. I'm going to roll it out just a little bit more. Check my phone. Looks good. Sweet. There's my template. Before I do this though, before I go and cut this, I need to put the texture in it. You could stamp it with all kinds of things if you wanted to put texture in it. You could put down some rope and push it in and it would make some squiggly lines. That's kind of cool. You could press shells into it now. This is a piece that my son had made. I think it was my son's, and it has leaf impressions on it. See that? And even when he stretched it, put it together, it stretched where the veins of the leaf are. And this one, of course, had some glaze rubbed into it. It was very thin glaze, it looks like, a little thicker on the inside, and then he put a handle on it. And yeah, that's cool. So anything you put in there can texture the clay. It could be kind of interesting to do that. You could even take, one of your scraper tools if you have something that's serrated and carve textures into it, or stamp textures with something else that has an interesting texture. Maybe you found something out in the garage. I'm going to use this. This is a placemat that was given to us in the studio, and it has a really cool spiraling texture to it. You can probably find things like this in a thrift store. Who knows where you might find something like this, but we got this when a friend of the studio, Muriel, was retiring, and Muriel called me up and said she had some stuff if I wanted to come go through it, and she would donate it to the college for our classes, and she had all kinds of great textures for us. We've used these in our class. These are little cutouts of flowers that came from like a tablecloth. And somebody took the time to cut them out so we can place them where we want and roll them into the clay. And then when it's fired and glazed, it looks like this. That's pretty cool. It makes a really nice texture, and then that texture catches the glaze and enhances the lines, especially if you use like a semi-transparent glaze like this one. This is one we call teal, blue, violet, because it does all three of those things depending on the atmosphere of the kiln and stoneware fired. Cone 10 stoneware is what we fire to, for those of you in U2 land that are interested. So here, I've got this. Check out that texture, isn't that awesome? I wonder what that's gonna look like with some glaze on it. That kind of anticipation has always kept me interested in ceramics. The firing process has always been, opening up a kiln's like, opening up a present. It's a gift. Every kiln firing, it's awesome, and it keeps us potters coming back over and over again. And I got interested in that when I was in college. My ceramics professor, Jerry Likens, he hope you're out there, Jerry. Maybe you're watching. I'm still here doing it. Thank you. He would let us fire the kiln, taught us right away, very early on, to have the responsibility of firing the kilns. I remember one of my first firing by myself, one of the burners went out. And it's natural gas burners. And I was a little afraid of it. Gas could be a dangerous thing if you're not careful. And I had to call him up and tell him that I was having this problem. And what he told me is to go change the thermocouple. That's probably why the pilot light was going out. So he told me where they were and where I could find the tools and how to do it. The problem being it was right in between the kiln side of the kiln where the burner was and the wall of the building is about a 2-foot space, and it was kind of tight and it was kind of hot, and one burner on the other side was still burning. There was 2 burners in the kiln. It's still going, so there's a roar. It's very late in the firing for this to happen, but I had to go in between the building and the wall of the kiln, the hot kiln, and change the thermocouple. And I did it. I was a little scared at first. Afraid it was going to blow up or something, do something wrong. But really, it was nothing dangerous about it. So I don't think it's dangerous anymore. I'm used to fire now a lot. So I guess I was just being young and cautious, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I appreciated the responsibility that he gave us and allowed us to have. And sometimes there's only a small amount of students that I have that are really interested in taking their ceramics that far by taking on that kind of responsibility. Spending 12 hours with a kiln, that's a lot of time and a lot of responsibility, and some people don't care to do that. And to fire gas kilns, you pretty much have to be there all the time. You are the controller. So here I've scored and slit the same way. I made angles on the end, so I'm going to wrap this around. Let me turn it so you can see that. I'm going to wrap it around and carefully match those angles, so I get a nice clean lap joint. This time I'm going to use the back of my wooden knife. It has like a thumb on the end of it. And then push out from the inside and push in from the outside. And I'm not going to smooth this down. I don't want to hide the seam because I have all that texture. This kind of just goes right with it. There's nothing wrong with it. On the inside though, I will be sure to smooth it down. And this is working really good right now. So I'm kind of stoked. Make sure my camera's going. Looks good. Looks good so far. Check it in the mirror. I like this orientation of this being the top and this a little wider down the bottom, or well, let me see. Yeah, I'm gonna do that so it's a little wider at the top. I kind of like that. Well, no, that won't match that one. That one has a little wider base, so better go back. Decisions, right? I'm gonna take some of these scraps and use them for my base. I'm gonna ball it up real good, and you know, if you don't have a slab roller, you could, you know, pound out some clay like a pancake, and maybe make a small piece out of it. It's kind of fun. Just to even it out, I'm going to hit it with the roller because I have one. Yeah, you might problem solve. Think, what kind of things could you use as a roller that you could roll clay with? That's plenty. Probably too much. In this case, what I'm going to do, I'll stick with the needle tool. Why not? I'm going to draw around it. Sure, it'd be good if you'd taken your tools home. I hope you have. If not, you can improvise. That's what we got to do. So we're going to get this done, aren't we? I hope so. Hope you're with me on that. Score this up a little bit. I'm going to have a couple fine cups after this. Now, I had a couple students that were interested. You know, they want their stuff fired. Things they made already this semester. They might have stuff in the studio. And at the current time, what I understand students have to do is to fill out a form that was emailed to students, and as a Res Life form, to make an appointment to come onto campus to pack out their stuff. And even those of you who are commuters, non-resident students, you don't live in the campus housing, you have to go through residence life too, is what I was told by our campus safety. So this is just what I was told the other day. So you can fill out that online form and submit it to Res Life, and they will give you a time. I suppose that, you know, it's out of my hands really there. I don't run the show, just the show. That's what us faculty are for. We teach. Other people come up with the other stuff. We're supposed to teach our butts off and do a good job at that. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm going to do. I'll keep doing it. It's a good job. I love it. I love it. Let somebody else do the administration stuff. People who are good at that. This is what I'm good at, and I realize that. I'm kind of lucky for it that I can realize that. And I have a love for it. It's soothing for me. But it's also rewarding to see my students become successful. And so some of you students who want to get your stuff here on campus, you've already made a lot of stuff, some of you, and I commend you for your hard work that you've already put in this semester. And I apologize that this has gone this way, although it's really none of our faults. I still feel bad about it. And in order to get your stuff here on campus, you've got to go through their channels. and try not to try to be understanding, I guess is what I want to say about that, because we're all in this and we're trying to work through it. They don't want big groups of people coming to campus at one time. So the other problem is, I'm not sure what is going to happen in our state here in Virginia. I did hear, some talk of the potential that the state would have a shelter-in-place order, and in that case, I believe they would close the campus down. I was recommended to get what I need out of my office and here out of my studio, all my tools, and take them home with me today. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2020. So I'm going to do that. The rest of my videos are likely to be done from home. So here, we've just made that cup. Except for the top, we're going to do the top real quick. I'm almost done with this video. I don't know how long I've been going. We'll see at the end. People go to workshops, ceramic workshops, and they pay good money to watch professional artists make work for them, demonstrate. And so I hope you like this, because this is worth something. I hope it's worth something to you, that I'm not taking up too much of your time, that you're not unhappy about that. I know not all of you are art majors, I'm sure of that. That's kind of a nice cup. I like that. It reminds me of like growth rings on a tree. So I'm going to set this aside here and show you how to do the handle. This is my soft one. I want the one that was done yesterday. That's this one. I'm just going to take the sponge one more time. I've got a couple loose things to clean up and make sure it's this is ready. Make sure the rim of your cup is nice and smooth. And then you think about it, if your cup is going to touch your mouth, you don't want it to be all jagged and sharp and nasty, right? Think about that. Form and function. If it's going to function as a cup, and it's going to touch your mouth, make it nice. And attention to detail, craftsmanship, that's really an important thing to learn. And to express that you understand it. And I should be able to see that when you take a photograph of your piece and you send it to me. I want to see that you took the time to do it nicely, even in this case. I think that's really an important part of learning this craft. And that's why you took this class, not just for a check in the box that I did a creative arts class in the Arts and Humanities school, but that you have learned something from it and you're able to express what you've learned. And so that's why I'm preaching it. So one of the things I want to show you how to do is make a handle like I did here. I made this handle yesterday and it's a little stiff because I made it yesterday. I let it stiffen up overnight in this shape. I kind of stuck it on the board that the cup stayed on overnight and in this shape, and it held that shape and stiffened a little bit. And that makes it a little easier to work with sometimes. So I'm going to take some of this scrap clay, ball it up. I'm going to make a lengthy carrot. You could make it in your hands, easier to roll on your table. And what I mean by a carrot, it should taper, thick at one end, a little thinner at the other. And I do that by rolling kind of carefully more in one area, and then I could roll towards the thicker area if I want to thin that down. Go back and forth. And so there, I got a carrot, right? So in order to make a handle, this is flat on that side and the bottom. It's a little rounded on the top. This is an easy way to make a handle. I actually learned this from a YouTube video. Because usually I pull my handles, but this is a little cleaner in our circumstances, in your circumstances at home. You could pull a handle if you want to practice that, that's cool. But I know we're limited in what you have at home in your space and your clay. So if you do it this way, we make the round tapered carrot, right? And then I want to flatten it on one side by dropping it. So I drop it down onto my cloth and I can peel it up. See how it flattened there? It's rounded on that side. I'm going to do it again. You gotta be careful you do it in the same spot, so that looks good. I'm throw it on a little bit of angle. Oops, a little bounce on that one. That's pretty good. I'm gonna stop right there with the throwing and don't want to get out of hand here. And I'm gonna take a little bit of water. I've got some water in the cup here and my sponge. Dampen the sponge so it will slide along the clay really well. And I am going to press down with my fingers down onto the clay, kind of like what I was doing on the rim. And you can do the thumb right down the middle. Make sure you peel it up every now and then as you stretch it. I'm going to look at the thickness. I don't want to go too thin. Don't want it to be too thick either. Stretch that down a little bit more. That could be a decent handle right there, so I like that. That's how I made this handle. What I do want to do with this one, I'm going to change its shape just a little bit. Thinking about, how this is going to function. It's going to be stuck onto the cup there. I want to get 2 fingers on. So I think I'm actually going to cut some of the thick end off here. And trying to do it about on a 45-degree angle. I've got a little more than that. This is going to kind of work like that. And I'm going to be able to put it on and then bring that over, and I think that's going to work well. So one thing I never do is put my handles all the way at the top of the cup. I don't like to do that. I like to come down here so that you have a little spring up and down. And I don't like the handles to get higher than the top of the cup. That's me. That's how I like to do my designs, and I think it's a good way of placing the handle. And so I've kind of chosen this spot over here to put the handle on. I'm going to do it down from the top just a little bit. Kind of messed up and made a little extra mark here. It's okay. I'm going to score that area, and then it's going to attach down this way. So I'm going to make a little target score down here and add some slip, which I have here. Score and slip. And I'm going to do the same thing to the top of the handle. I won't bother with the bottom because I'll be adjusting it. Score that up pretty good. I usually add my handles on right after I pull them. But in this case, I wanted to try this out. I thought it would work good for you at home. And so I'm going to add some slip down here. So let's give this a go. I'm going to press that on, and what I'm going to do actually is set this down edge of the table. I know you can't see it that way, but I'm trying to push from underneath and then back it up with pressure on the inside of the clay too. And you'll see I'm actually squeezing the slip out as I do that. I'm going to clean that up in a minute, but let's just let that bond a little bit. And now I want to take this tag end, and how about that? That's going to work pretty good. I like it. It's a nice size, I think. So I can get 2 fingers through, my thumb on top, my ring finger down below here. You can actually balance the cup really well that way if you're holding it like that. So that's how I like to do my handles. Make sure they're aligned up and down. Sometimes they get a little out of alignment, and that doesn't always work so good. If you can't push really hard on that because your clay's a little soft, you might have to back it up on the inside with a stick or a spoon, like I'm doing here, or the back of your wooden tool. Make sure that is going to be stuck on there. Very good. Don't want it popping off. One thing that'll help you ensure that your handles don't pop off is that you let this kind of set up overnight with plastic over top of it. Put a plastic bag over it, grocery bag, like we use in the studio. That will allow these wet areas that I just attached to kind of buddy up with the more dry areas and kind of equalize the moisture content so they don't separate. Last thing I'm going to do right here is I'm just taking my slip and my paintbrush to smooth out any of the excess slip that I squeezed out. If you're not squeezing slip out, you're probably not using enough slip. It would be good to use some. And there's a nice handle for that cup. So I think at the end of the rope for this video, I want to put it in the can. So send it off to you. That way you can get started on some of your projects. I want you to make a set of cups. You're going to make 2 cups that are of the same family. And so try some textures out on them. Make them interesting, be creative. And these are going to be nice cups. So if you do plan to bring them back for me to fire at some point, it's really important to put your name on the bottom of your work, and not just your initials, please. Your whole name. It really is helpful if you have your name, that way I can get it back to you. If I've got to hunt through things that have no name or a bunch of initials, it really doesn't help in the studio organization and getting this accomplished. Having your name on your work, it's like turning in your English paper back when you used to turn it in written form. If you don't have your name on it, you're not getting credit for it. And it should be the same here. So put your name on the bottom if you're bringing it back to me to get it fired. Otherwise, it's not so important, but I do think you should consider that. Anyhow, I hope I'll see you soon. I'm going to make another video in just a few minutes. And you'll see that posted shortly too.